so much for joining us on MasterClass CX for a brand new episode. Today, we're going to be doing something slightly different. We're going to be meeting with someone from the industry, and we're going to be meeting with Kasper, founder and CEO at Copenhagen Optimization. He's based out of Denmark, and it's going to be a really interesting conversation as to how his product and service is helping folks, at airports breeze through, security and the general waiting times. It's going to be a really interesting conversation, so stay tuned. And I'm sure, you're going to take something away from this episode. And I'd like to welcome Kasper to this episode of the podcast. Kasper, thank you so much for joining us and actually taking the time out. I know you've been extremely busy, but thank you once again. Before we dive in, would you mind just introducing yourself to our listeners and viewers, please?
Yeah, 100%. So first of all, thanks for having me. As you said, my name is Kasper Hounsgaard. I'm the co-CEO and co-founder of Copenhagen Optimization. And I mean, we've been running the company now for a little over 8 years. And I'll come back to some of the background, but really exciting times right now with the kind of virtual queuing and how we go from being a little bit behind the scenes with what we've done in the past to now really being front and center in the hands of the passengers.
So Kasper, very interesting, but also would like to understand as to how did the thought and idea of this product and service come about? I mean, was it based on personal experience? Or I know you've spent lots of time within airports. Was it just seeing passengers? How did this really come about?
No, it's a good question, and as a company, as I said before, I mean we're working quite a bit in the background. So originally we kind of have a software solution called Better Airport, but that's really not so much for the passengers. It's for the companies that will operate an airport. So essentially, we'll have a software that will help the airport figure out, okay, well, this passenger on this flight, where is this person going to check in? Where are the bags going to go? Where's the aircraft going to park? How many lanes should I open in security to make sure I don't kind of violate my service level targets on wait time? Well, when should I put my staff onto breaks? What shifts should my staff have? So and like also looking at immigration and essentially any touch point you have as a passenger through the airport. Now, what we then started thinking about is airports today is essentially one of the few areas where you as a person are very much in not in control, right? We're with digitalization, everybody's getting used to being more and more in control of what they have to do. But when you have to go through an airport, I mean, you don't choose where to check in your bag. You've been kind of told on a screen, here you should go drop your bags, right? And like you can't decide whether you want to go through security or not. You have to go through security. So what we kind of started thinking was, what if we could actually put in the hands of the passenger an opportunity to at least regain some of that control, which is essentially what we've done with our virtual queuing product, where now what we offer the passenger is the ability to sit at home and say, okay, I'm flying on this flight tomorrow, and I'd like to go through security at 10 a.m. That suits me fine. That will give me another kind of 2 hours before my flight. Now you can actually book a slot to know that when you come at 10 a.m., if you booked a slot through the virtual queuing, all you have to do is scan a QR code and you're through security. And we essentially have set that up in a way so that there is no wait time for the passengers. We've distributed that in a way so that it really kind of makes sure that the passenger get a very seamless experience. And the sign up, all we ask the passenger for is their flight details and an email address so that we can communicate with them. That's really what we need. So very easy and something that we've also seen both airports and passengers really liking so far.
Whilst we understand what this solution is, can you kind of just talk me through what it would mean for me to use a service in, let's say, an airport that actually has this virtual queuing versus one that doesn't. I mean, clearly I haven't seen it work, so I think that'll just help us understand what virtual queuing can actually do.
Best way to kind of address that is every passenger that uses our service will get a survey afterwards, and we'll ask them kind of, so what did you do instead of waiting in line? Because essentially what you make sure they're not doing is waiting. So what most passengers are feeding back, about 60% of them are saying, well, I actually spend the time either shopping or eating or drinking. So that's a win-win, right? You have a passenger, and we know from tons of analysis in airports that, and probably also in other areas, but my area of expertise is airports, right? If you have a passenger who is not stressed, they'll spend more money. And like airports want to have passengers that are spending money because then they're making more money, right? And now you have a passenger who is completely relieved of stress because they knew when to go through security. They come on the other side, they have more time to spend because they didn't wait like 20 minutes or 10 minutes or 30 minutes in the queue. No, they breezed right through. So now they have maybe an hour to spend before they have to head to their gate. They're relaxed and they're happy. I mean, you go grab a beer, or you go sit down, have a meal, or you go into some stores and shop. So I think it's really, for us, we can see from the surveys, we're providing peace of mind, and I think that's fantastic.
Taking us through the airports that you're currently in, where you'll start off, and how's that kind of scaled up, from when you all started up until now? Clearly, we know for a fact that the pandemic wasn't a great time for the aviation industry. I think the last 3 years wasn't great, but hopefully, you're seeing green shoots and things kind of coming back to normal.
So right now we're about 20 airports. We started in the summer of 2021 in Seattle Tacoma International Airport in the US.
Right.
And they actually set up a quite interesting pilot program where they ran kind of a competitive tender process, and they selected us as well as another company. And we
Mm-hmm.
essentially were told, okay, you get 3 months in they had kind of two different security checkpoints. We had one,
Yeah.
the other company had a security checkpoint in which to kind of prove out the technology, because like this has not at that time it had not been done at scale in airports before. So
Right.
it was something completely new, and we are like, I believe we did our homework in a very good way, and we had a good combination. We have a partner company that we work with. They're kind of the experts in the field of um, of the virtual queuing generically across multiple industries, like it from amusement parks and similar. Whereas we
Right.
we kind of took the role as being the airport experts, right? We know everything about
Mm-hmm.
passenger behavior and forecasting and planning of an airport. So we
Yeah.
teamed up with the company at that point. It was Yline. They've since been acquired by a company called Clear. And we teamed up, worked really well together, and essentially, I think we kind of knocked it out of the park in Seattle. We really showed that this could make a difference. We're able to make a lot of passengers happy, but I think one of the other things that we're able to do is, because what we showed to the passenger is a time slot for them to sign up to, we're essentially, with our software and kind of the machine learning and the algorithms underneath there, we're pulling the strings to make sure that a passenger that signs up is not just at random given a set of slots. No, no, no. We've actually controlled which slots they see, so that we flatten the peak, so that we say, well, I know a bunch of these passengers would arrive in the peak period, but now I'm actually notching them ever so slightly to come outside the peak period. And that's not only to the benefit of the ones that are using the product, it's to the benefit of everybody, right? So that was where we started. And then from there on, I think it was a little bit all eyes on Seattle, because all airports were quite interested in this and was like, okay, if it works there, it could work for us. So the first expansion we made from there was into additional airports in North America. So we now are, I think we are in soon to be 10 airports in the US. We expanded into Canada. Our first airport in Canada was Calgary. Now we are in the 5 largest airports in Canada, and we're starting really to get good support from the communities around the airports, the airlines. Really, everybody's seen this as something of a game changer. And now we're also surely moving into Europe. So
Yeah.
we kind of had Berlin as our first airport in Europe, and now we're seeing Frankfurt, Amsterdam, Rome, other large airports going
Wow.
live with the product. So we are now in just shy of 20 airports, and I see no reason why this should stop anytime soon.
Could you also just kind of explain as to how is this solution helping both the airports as well as passengers? I think I broadly understand it, but who's really your target? I mean, who are you kind of selling this product to? Is it really the airports, or is it more for passengers? How's that kind of playing out?
Yeah, so as a solution provider, I mean, our our client is essentially the airports, right? So we target selling this to the airports, but how do we do that? Well, we do that by showing that passengers are actually extremely happy of using the service. So I think, I mean, I would say it's kind of a win-win-win all the way around, right? Because if we do this correctly, this will be a win for all passengers, not only the ones that we are using the service, but also the ones that are essentially indirectly affected by us changing slightly the behavior of passengers going through the airports. The airports themselves, of course, like they will build a business case and say, okay, is this worth the amount of money that we have to pay to these guys for putting in this service? And I think it's kind of a twofold benefit. One is the operational benefit of saying, well, I can influence my passengers. I can lower my peak. That means I have lower wait times, and potentially over time, it means I can also have fewer staff on duty, because what's really costly in airports is the peaks. If you can lower those peaks, you can actually save some cost on staffing, or essentially adopt more growth without having to expand your workforce. And then there's also the commercial upside that I touched on before. You're getting a happy passenger to come in through the security with ample time to spare. I mean, they're going to spend more money. So I do think
So
we have
just
a
want to
very
kind of dwell
compelling
on
case
that
here.
just a little bit as well, Casper. So clearly you're getting a lot of feedback from customers, and how is it that all of that feedback is getting fed back into the dev teams to ensure that the products really continues to be fit for purpose? I mean, I think things are moving at such a rapid pace these days. It's only fair that the product continues to remain relevant as well. So how is that kind of work within your organization?
Yeah, so as I said, we are sending out surveys to statistically valid amount of passengers, and we have been tracking that from day one, right? And we have been asking a set of questions, and generally satisfaction rates have just been through the roof. I mean, 95% plus satisfaction with the program. I mean, it's also a free program, and so what's not to like, right? And some of what we are really tracking is to see, okay, what kind of like what kind of say constructive feedback do we get from the passengers that are using the service, right? How can we improve? The passengers are good at saying, well, there's something around maybe the signage in the airport that could be improved, because you book it at home, but once you then get to the airport, you somehow want to make sure that you understand where is it that I'm supposed to go. Those are some of the feedback where we say, okay, there may be some room for improvement there. Also around like the ease of using the product, I think we have a number of ideas on how we can do that better. But generally, I think, of course, it's very much around the satisfaction rates, and then like what is the reason for choosing this product, which is a bit of a tie between peace of mind and just efficiency and saving
Feedback.
time.
How is that kind of going into the development of your product or improvement of the product that you have? Is that something that you'll consciously do? And importantly, how are the CX metrics are you looking like from the time you've actually implemented this right up to now? I mean, has there been a massive shift? How are those matrices looking?
Yeah, no, so I think some of what we're looking at is how can we just kind of overall streamline the experience of signing up. We're also looking at because we're now getting kind of a good critical mass of airports. I mean, there's a good chance that if you're flying in Canada domestically, you'll fly between one of the 5 airports where this service is available. So we also want to make sure that the passenger will understand, oh, well, if you're flying to Calgary from Toronto and you're then most likely having a return ticket, well, you could use this service when you're flying back. Some of what we're also getting feedback on from from the users, the passengers, is, hey, this is great. Why couldn't I use it for check-in? So we're also looking at saying, well, we want to essentially to give the passenger the ultimate control, right? Book your parking from home, book your slot at check-in from home, book your slot in security from home, book a slot at your favorite restaurant from home. And by the way, I'll also throw in a discount of 15% when you go to these selected stores. And then you're stress-free all the way through, right? You know everything that you have to do in the airport, and it's all scheduled for you. And that is something that we're working on right now with several airports too, to make it not only about security.
But how's your demographic really looking? I mean, are your customers or are the passengers more leisure passengers, or are they, business frequent flyers? How's that split kind of looking?
Yeah, I think the demographics was something that we were like before we started. We had like we didn't have internal betting on it, but there were some strong opinions for okay, what are the demographics going to look like? What we've seen is, a little bit to my surprise, at least, it's like 85% or so of the users are leisure. So that is passengers that don't travel that often. That like the passengers that get the survey are able to put in kind of some free text comments, and like, as I tell my team, if you're in a bad mood, just go read the comments, because you'll be so happy, right? It's like there's this, like, I remember one from a mother with 5 kids in tow. She said this was a lifesaver. I mean, I had to travel with these 5 kids alone. Without this, I don't know what I should have done, right? So it's very much the leisure travelers that we are able to catch, and also the ones that, like, they are frequent travelers, so they don't necessarily have the benefits of a frequent traveler who, like in Europe, would have some kind of status with an airline and may be able to use a fast track. In the US, they may be kind of pre-check or clear, so they could, through those means, skip the line. And I think also importantly, those are the ones that will pre-plan their journey from home, right? If you're flying down to kind of a sunny destination tomorrow morning, you know when you have to start at home and then go all through these steps, right? If I'm on a business trip and I have a meeting in the city and I have to go out to the airport, I mean, I don't know when that meeting necessarily ends. Is that at 3 p.m. or 4 p.m. or 5 p.m.? My flight is at 8 p.m. So maybe I'll just head to the airport whenever I'm ready. It's a little bit harder to plan, I think,
So
for the
clearly, I think
frequent travel.
all of us, when we're actually launching out products, make certain assumptions. Clearly, that was the case with you all as well. But the reality can be quite different. So yeah, it's quite interesting, and I think it's just how quickly you're able to make those adjustments, tweak the product, really understand what the aspirations are, and then kind of move and push ahead, I guess.
Yeah, and we also do see, and probably not that surprising, but we do see some kind of change or differences in the demographics across various different locations. But I will say it is still primarily a product for leisure, right? Of course, we have even more leisure traffic in Orlando, for instance, because like everybody goes to Orlando for leisure. When you look at the overall demographics, right? And then some cities like New York, we have a little bit fewer leisure because there's just more business travelers. But I think overall, it's quite clear.
And Casper, how do you actually monetize this? With the airport operators? It's
Yeah,
a
so our model as kind of a software provider. I mean, we offer it to the airports on a software as a service subscription. So essentially, that's the same as as a person, like you'll sit at home and you'll subscribe to use Netflix, and like at scale, that's the same model we're using with the airports. I mean, we're of course charging somewhat more than a Netflix subscription, but the idea is the same. We offer a product and we continuously improve that product to the airport. Now, that is our standard model. We do have some airports that are considering more of a potential kind of pay per use model. So they will go to the airports, and a passenger may then have to pay for it. Now, some of the discussions we have, because we want to continue the notching, is let's see if we can make that kind of an, say, if you're booking a slot, like a prime slot in the peak, it'll cost you more. If you're booking an off-peak slot where I actually want you to come, right, because that's best for the overall airport operation, it may be free of charge. So we're working with these kind of different levers as to how can we influence passengers to essentially do what we want them to do, which is best for the airport operation as a whole.
And as well, Casper, is clearly, I mean, you'll have had a massive growth over the last 2 years. I mean, through the pandemic, which is great. So you're in about 20 airports at the moment. What is your growth plans? I mean, how are you kind of looking to kind of scale this up into other areas, other regions, possibly anywhere in the Middle East at all that you're thinking of?
No, definitely. I think we are in dialogue with some airports in the Middle East around the product. I think there is a every time we enter kind of, say, a new market of demographics, everybody's looking at the other airport and say, hey, could you go first, because then you can show us whether it works or not. So there's a little bit of their, like, first mover versus fast follower versus, okay, now it's actually proving, so now we better get on the train, right? I think personally that what we see in the industry is something that in a quite, I would say, conservative industry like airports. I mean, getting from one airport a year and a half ago to 20 today is quite dramatic kind of almost lightning speed. I mean, you would say, well, a year and a half, that's a lot of time. Well, in airports, it's not a lot of time. I mean, selling to one airport would take a year and a half sometimes, right? So the way I look at it is, I think we're moving from something that was not in airports 2 years ago, that is now becoming, oh, that's innovation, that's pretty cool, to something which then became, oh, that's a nice to have, to something which is now becoming a need to have. Because once passengers have tried it, they will expect it, right? If you remember back, like in 2008-ish, there was not really self-service kiosks in airports, right? You had to go to the counter to get things done for you. Now, go to an airport without a self-service kiosk, you'll be like, what? I can't do this on my, you had a paper boarding pass. I mean, now everything is on your phone. I to me, that's where my head is. That's where we're heading, is to say, well, within the next 2-3 years, the idea of course being able to plan your journey through the airport, that is going to be one that passengers will start to demand. And the main, and essentially they're already doing that. I mean, we can see in the airports where we've been the longest, we have more repeat users than first time users, right? Passengers really love this. They will use it every time they fly. And that's also a lot of what we see in the comments. So I think it's becoming something that, yes, it will happen, and it will be more of something that the airports needs to consider as kind of a standard piece of offering that you have in the airport. And as I said, I think really, yes, we started in security. I see some extremely extremely good options for expanding that out to check in to other areas, like essentially everywhere in the airport where you potentially could have a wait. Let's like schedule that for you so that you're not waiting.
And that kind of brings us to the end of this episode, Kasper. Thank you again, for joining us. But I'm sure, a lot of our viewers and listeners are going to find what you'll do within Copenhagen Optimization very interesting. Where can they find you and get a bit more detail in terms of, what you'll actually do?
Absolutely. So, I mean, you can go on to our website, CopenhagenOptimization.com. There you can find some more information about us and what we do as a company. I mean, we also have a very strong marketing team, so you'll be able to see all the news about us on LinkedIn. Just kind of type in Copenhagen Optimization, and then it will pop up. And you can also kind of similarly with our partner Clear, you can also go to their website and kind of see all the airports where we're currently active. And I'm really seeing like they're also very focused on the customer experience. So definitely seek us out, and any good ideas, and feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to get in touch.
And before I let you go, I mean, obviously, I think airports are your focus, but any other industries that you think you'll be getting into, and how quickly is that going to look to happen?
Is kind of where we started. I do think that we see especially kind of industries that are a bit similar to airports, where there is this, I would call it a kind of a loss of control for the passengers or whoever is using it. So I mean, we are in talks with some kind of theme parks, amusement parks, about doing something which, I mean, not, I would say is maybe a little bit more intelligent behind the scenes than what is in theme parks today. We're also kind of like considering kind of cruise lines. We are in dialogue with several cruise lines to see, okay, well, that process. And very often there's also like, if you're on a cruise, you'll either come from the airport or go to the airport after that cruise. So that's also really some element there for adoption. So those are that's kind of our bread and butter, where there's some kind of feel of transportation or logistics involved.
Great, Kasper. And that is a wrap. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'm sure we'll catch up very, very soon. But until then, take care, all the very best, and stay in touch.